to you and the book and the whole blog, you know how we curate things and we curate photographs, and sometimes what it lacks is we don't curate the feelings. So this book, I think, is more of an album of feelings.
Yes.
So you can, you know, it's very precious to have that the feeling that how I felt at that moment. But you can't have that in a snapshot of a picture. You cannot have even in a painting. You know, but a story is that art that is it exudes that feeling every time. And not only that, it may also, like a beautiful song or not, it can meet you where you are at that time. So you know, so it's amazing. And to me, if I read that blog now and I'm, you know, fasting, the dinner table when I wrote that blog was full. And now it's I'm by myself because the boys are doing residency in college. My mom passed away, you know, may God bless her. My dad is in Pakistan. My husband is traveling for work. So that dinner table now, the same dinner table, the same morning routine, but it's just very different. It's a very different side of the reaction. So to me, I think it's just the curated feelings that we somehow, especially in a very fast-paced world where we live in, we accumulate the artifacts, but not the feeling with it. So I don't know, I'd wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I think so beautifully said, Uzma. Really, I think there are so many feelings between these pages, and I hope people will feel them. And the reactions that I'm getting so far, I think it's working, this curation of feelings. You know, and that's why I think making the video was also important, just to show how much love and heart and soul has been put into not just the personal heartfelt stories, but the art and the artist and her story, and then the making of the book. You know, all of that is stitched in these pages. I mean, the different artisans, their life story and what they're thinking as they're stitching, and the care and attention that they're giving, they're part of the story too. And then the readers, you know, they will, I'm sure, be thinking of their own stories and what they're grateful for and what wisdoms come to mind as they're reading this selection of wisdoms. And that's really what I wanted, is for people to use this as a way to have these heartfelt conversations with their own families, you know, exchange these stories, what's important for them intergenerationally, and you know, in their nuclear family, just talk about important traditions and important wisdoms. And this book, while it's sort of packed like a book, it really is meant to be, as you say, a collection of feelings, and hopefully encourage conversation in families, with neighbors, and with people who may at first seem different from us. You know, this is a way to get to know people. And that's why one of the things that we did is at the end of the book, there's some postcards. There are, with the beautiful art, there are 4 postcards, and the idea is to just jot down a memory that you would like to keep, that you cherish, a wisdom or a story or a gratitude, whatever it is, and just tuck it away and keep it, or share some aspect of your story and send it to a friend that you'd like to get to know better. And so part of this book is really a call to conversation and to sharing our stories. And Uzma, I want to remind you of the feeling from your piece, because it's so beautiful. As you were saying, you know, you captured this moment around a morning suhoor table. Your friends and your parents were there, and you were just reminiscing about all of this wisdom being passed from your parents to your children, and your children imbibing this sense of love and support and strength from your parents. And you were wondering, you know, who is benefiting from this? So you write, I often wonder who is benefiting the most And it is almost humbling to see that I come out as the true winner. The richness of the love of my parents for my children and the strength of the bond my children provide to my parents is priceless. This wealth is too precious to ignore, the return on investment priceless. I pray that Allah gives me the strength to continue to be this passage between the two generations and show compassion and tolerance to my parents and leadership by example to my children.
Oh. You know, it's, you know, Sama, thank you for reading that. Like, it's giving me goosebumps. Like I say, I now it's, you know, how it evolves. We evolve through different stages in life. You know, and it brings to another.
I get from the book and what you just shared is also that heritage and identity are not straight lines. You know, your faith, where you came from, your experiences, how you see yourself in the world. They're not these insular things or just linear paths. They're all woven together and quite nuanced, right? So you're talking about American Muslims, but you're also talking about an experience of immigration that a lot of people can relate to. You're also talking about culture and history and intergenerational relationships. And I think that's what makes it so beautiful, is that it unpacks every possible kind of stereotype of, you know, that you could have of people. And it doesn't, not just American Muslims. You could take this approach to anybody, that, you know, there's so many stories that are untold or unspoken of when you see a person. And this is begging us to look beyond kind of the visual or the superficial, right? And so I think that's really special. It's almost like encouraging people to think critically in a different way about issues and about individuals. I also think this is a form of like cultural preservation almost, because a lot of times in the experience of migration, certain stories, they either get lost or they the book is closed on those stories because people want to look forward, and they think looking back or bringing certain things, you know, into a new place is not modern or not relevant. And sometimes it's for painful reasons. And I think this, you know, you frame kind of the need to, you know, maintain heritage and history in a very positive, future kind of oriented way by focusing on kindness and good deeds. And it's very tactical almost, right? And it gives people like the tools to think about their heritage and their traditions. It got me thinking of all the things that, you know, we used to do during Ramzan, like growing up in Ohio, and how a lot of those things were very uniquely Midwestern, more Midwestern than Pakistani. And so it's just, I think it's a really good tool, if you will, for understanding what heritage and tradition means.
What is your experience in storytelling as a healing tool?
That's such a beautiful question. And I'll share a very personal example of my father. So, you know, this book, as I was going through it, selecting posts from the past 9 years and reading it sort of, you know, sequentially for the first time, I realized that there is a thread that goes through the book, and that's my dad. My dad was the ultimate storyteller. And there is so many stories that he shared in this book that I write about, and that he, in fact, even wrote a story called Khudafiz Bapu, Goodbye Father. When he said goodbye to his father, he remembers the date and the exact time. I mean, that's how vivid his memory was. He was 20 years old. He was leaving for London to study engineering, leaving Calcutta, and his father had come to the port to see him off, and he said goodbye to his father. And a few years later, I would say those words to my father. And so, you know, for me, this book, I mean, it's also very personal, because there is so much that's recorded in here about my father and his stories that I would have forgotten, but now it's captured, and my kids will always have it, and their kids. I mean, it's our legacy, it's our story. And one amazing thing happened in terms of healing, and it's been very healing for me to have captured these stories. And as I was going through the comments that people leave on the blog, I found two that I'd never seen before. They were from 2013, and they were from my father. And, to find them now at a time that I am missing him so much, and longing that he could have been here to see his stories recorded in this way. But to know that he was reading the blog regularly, and that, not being particularly tech savvy, but he figured out how to comment on the blog. And I found these now, and they were addressed to my two kids, to Sanya and to Zaid. And to Zaid, he wrote, "You are my best friend." And he went on with this lovely message. And to my daughter, he said, "I know you're going to fulfill all your dreams." So, for me to find these messages now, it's literally a godsend, right? I know my dad knows that this book is here. I know that he's looking after my kids. My kids know that, his support and his love are enduring and endearing. And so I've cut those, I've printed out those letters and kept them in their rooms. And that's a very personal story of healing for me that comes through stories, and why I think capturing and recording and cherishing our stories is so important. Our stories are all that we have. They're the only things that are truly ours. I mean, even our children, they go off and they lead their lives, and anything else we may accumulate in terms of success in our profession or fame or wealth, it's not all that important, and it's transitory. And our stories, I mean, while we're mortal, our stories will live on, and so that for me is why this book is so important, not just because it's a collection of our collective stories, but because it's something our children, all of our children, can turn to understand where they're coming from, what their heritage is, what traditions were like when their grandparents were growing up, and they can feel confident to make their own traditions, make their own stories, live their own histories, and really come from a place of a strong foundation.
It's beautiful. Oh, that's lovely. So, Uzma, I would love to get your reactions to the project, and also what compelled you to contribute your stories.
So Shamila, it's everything what Salma said and more. I think it was the ordinary extraordinariness of it, right? Because it wasn't asking for a published, author to contribute. It was people telling stories. So to me, that was very, and it was still, I mean, Shazma introduced me to Salma and like Salma's blog, and I was like reading it, and it was Ramzan, and we were on the sahur, the sehri as we call, and they call sahur here. So we were all eating. So it was my mom, dad, my husband, my two boys, and myself. And to me, this is just a whole process snapped in front of me, that how the love flows and how traditions flow. It's not a static thing. It changes its shape, but then it just still keeps its soul. So there was a time that I just pictured when the same, sahur in Pakistan or in Dubai where I grew up, but it was my parents and my grandparents and us. So I was sitting there as a kid and listening to the two sides, and now here I am holding the two generations, and all of a sudden becoming that empowering link between these two generations. And I think one of the things which is so beautiful about this is there are many ways to do this, but the most impactful way to me is storytelling, because I think that is an art which we underestimate. It's like the verandas where we sat with our grandparents and cousins and just listened to the story. So that to me was the most amazing thing, and that actually encouraged me to even write the blog about that, the whole feeling that I am the conduit through which we can have this tradition flow, and also hoping that this continues, the flow continues. So Salma's blog was like a very, I would say, a safe space for me to just express what I wanted to express, and it was very welcoming.
And why do you think so many people, so many different kinds of people were attracted to the concept, and the concept evolved each year too. So it wasn't just one thing they were attracted to. So I would love to hear kind of your impressions of that.
Yes, I think it was the personal storytelling, to be honest. It's the blog, while it takes place during Ramadan and the central characters happen to be Muslim, it really is about our personal stories and the things that we cherish, the things that we value. And that is something that is common across the board. First and foremost, before we are part of a faith tradition or a political ideology or a country, we are human. We're human beings. And that's our connection. And that's, I think, why the blog appealed to a cross-section of people of faith and of no faith, because of the personal stories. Everybody can relate to a personal story. Everybody is grateful for their blessings. Everybody cherishes traditions in their own family. Everybody wants to do good deeds and be kind. I think that is something that unites us. That is something so basic in our human DNA. And just hearing these very ordinary stories. I mean, that was the other thing, is that these are not some extraordinary stories about, amazing people. This is just us, in our very ordinariness. And I think perhaps that was the second appeal, is that it's our ordinariness that connects us to each other. It's not when we do something amazing or are extraordinary in our impact. That kind of sets us apart a little bit, but it's our human connection, it's our ordinariness, just our everyday fears and hopes, dreams and challenges. If you reflect those honestly and with a sense of sincerity and perhaps vulnerability, I think that's a massive connection.